All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? We should be up, we should be live, we should be rocking. Hope you're all doing well. We've got some pretty good topics to talk about today, guys. It appears the last week was everyone give PR on like how your games are performing week. So we got a lot of numbers. I'm going to give you a few numbers off of the top to give you some context before we start diving into your comments and questions. But there's a few big topics we can talk about besides just numbers. One of the biggest topics that came out in the last few days is that Netflix is making a Gears of War movie with the Coalition. The Coalition is working with them on this. Gears of War, they've been trying to get a movie made for years. This isn't new info. I saw some people, whenever I posted about it, saying, is this really new info? We've known about a Gears of War movie. That part is not new. We've known that Microsoft's been trying to get Gears of War made for years. The part that's new here is that it's going to be with Netflix, and it's a pretty big deal because not only is it going to be a live-action movie, they're also making an animated series. So clearly, pretty big deal going on here. We can talk about it if you guys want. If you guys want to mention anything about casting, what it might mean for the Gears of War franchise in the future, if it can help the series, if we think it'll be successful or not. That's one of the big topics we can dive into. Nintendo did release their financials, so we'll dive into that. Here is their numbers for anyone that is curious. So Switch has now passed 114.33 million units since launch. Incredible result. It's about to pass the PlayStation 4. It will officially outsell the PlayStation 4 next quarter. So the quarter we're in right now. Once Nintendo reports these earnings that they're doing currently, it will surpass the PlayStation 4. So pretty incredible result there for Switch. Still a lot of life left in it. A few software updates for some of their newer releases we got. Splatoon 3 has shipped 7.9 million units already, which is incredible because keep in mind this is for as of end of September, I believe, unless they specifically stated, which I might have missed this, but usually whenever you report your earnings, it's within that quarter. I don't believe that they said this is through October. Could have missed that though. Occasionally companies will do that, but I believe this is as of September. It shipped 7.9 million, but I could be wrong. If so, then that's essentially within a month, like a little less than a month. So that's an incredible, honestly, it's a mind-blowing result. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, 1.72 million. Some people were talking about, I saw mixed reactions. Some people saying good number, some people saying bad number. To be clear, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, to me, that's a very good number for a game that is a JRPG that is exclusive to a console. Keep in mind, it's easy to forget whenever you look at something like Persona or you look at something like Final Fantasy to think that JRPGs are just these huge games that sell, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million units. That is not the typical range, right? The games like Persona 5 and Final Fantasy are the outlier for that genre, not the norm. Normally, JRPGs are not selling those kinds of units. So to be already approaching, 2 million units, I think that's pretty good for a JRPG that's exclusive. So good to see that for Xenoblade. Switch Sports is at 6.15 million. Definitely seems like it was worth bringing Switch Sports back, right? It definitely makes sense they brought that back. That's going to, I think, probably do pretty well over the holidays as well. Clearly, Switch Sports will be over a 10 million unit seller. Could even go on to be way higher than that, right? But the fact it's already over 6 million, it's going to clear 10 million with ease. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the most successful Kirby game of all time. It's at 5.27 million. Guys, for a Kirby game, this is outstanding. So I won't be surprised if you see a direct sequel to this. I don't know if it'll be Kirby and the Forgotten Land 2 or whatever, but I think you'll get a sequel that's like this 3D Kirby style game. It was the first Kirby I played and I loved it. I literally loved this game. I had messed with Kirby games in the past just very, very lightly. I'd never played through and beaten one and I loved it. I think you'll definitely get a direct, follow-up to this, another 3D Kirby in this style because it's a huge success. Mario Strikers Battle League, 2.17 million. It's okay, right? To me, that's an okay result. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. It's an all right result. It's okay. Some other numbers we got, because like I said, this was numbers week. I'm just going to fly through a few numbers for you guys before I get into your comments and questions in case you have any comments or questions about these. We found out that Grounded now has over 13 million players. That's tremendous considering the development size for Grounded is about 20 people. The return on investment for Grounded is incredible for Microsoft and Obsidian. This is a huge success for them. Now, clearly, this is on Game Pass, so that doesn't mean it sold 13 million copies. But keep in mind, Microsoft is going to look at their first-party games completely different than everyone's obsessed with sales. Heck, my name is Benji-Sales on Twitter. Whenever we look at Microsoft first party, we have to look at it through a bit of a different lens because for them, it's not just about sales anymore. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they'd love to sell millions and millions of units of games. But for them, honestly, what's going to become more important is engagement, right? Just like Netflix, it's about engagement. It's about how many people are watching a show, how many, those sorts of numbers, how many people are subscribing because of a show. Microsoft for their first party, third party is a different story, but for first party, we got to look at Microsoft through a bit of a different lens. Engagement is probably the most important metric now for them, and to have 13 million players, and some of those are sales, right? It's not like it sold 0 copies, but for a game that's only been developed by 20 people, budget obviously is not big with a development team that small, so great success for Grounded. It's doing very well. A Plague Tale Requiem's passed 1 million players in a week. Saw some people say that was disappointing. It's definitely not. One argument that I get a lot with Game Pass whenever I post something is all the time I'll have people be like, it's on Game Pass, should have already had 20 million players. You can't look at things quite like that, right? Because even the most successful, if you look at quite literally the most successful series that are on Netflix, the most successful movies of all time that they've had on their platform, the number ones, there's a massive amount of Netflix subscribers that don't watch them. If it's the number one movie they've ever had, a huge portion, you can just look at the numbers and see that a huge portion of Netflix subscribers didn't watch it, right? I think Red One at one point was like their most popular movie, and it was nowhere near all of their subscribers watching it. Same thing with even shows like Stranger Things, right? It's a giant successful juggernaut. Not everybody watches Stranger Things that subscribe to Netflix. You can't assume just because something's on the service that just everyone's going to play it, right? Same thing with Grounded at 13 million. There's hundreds of games on this service. Not everyone's going to play everything that's on it. So 1 million for A Plague Tale, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to tell you it's like this unbelievable home run and my mind's blown by that number, but 1 million in a week, that's actually very good for this style game. Keep in mind, this is not a giant AAA budget title, and the first game, it took it a year to sell 1 million copies. This did 1 million players in a week. Not an exact comparison because of the Game Pass factor, as we know, but this is actually good for a size title like that. Modern Warfare 2 has sold $1 billion in only 10 days. That is right. They did $1 billion in 10 days. Fastest Call of Duty seller ever. The previous record for $1 billion was Black Ops 2, which did it in 15 days. So this did it 5 days faster than Black Ops 2. It's the biggest entertainment launch of 2022. That includes movies, games, music, anything you want to factor in terms of entertainment. Modern Warfare 2 is the biggest launch of the year. Crazy numbers. I mean, to already be at over $1 billion, this thing is going to be clearing honestly, by the end of the holidays, this thing could be clearing 15 plus million copies sold. Easy. Easy. I mean, it could be higher than that. It's crazy. Modern Warfare 2 is an absolute juggernaut. And then just a couple more, and then I'm diving into your guys' comments and questions. We found out Death Stranding has passed 10 million players. Pretty good result, to be honest. Pretty good. I can see why they're doing a sequel. Death Stranding wasn't the biggest game of all time. Wasn't something like, it wasn't on the level of like a God of War or even a Horizon Zero Dawn or something. But to still do over 10 million players in 3 years, a lot of those is sales. Now, not all of it, right? Because this is on Game Pass PC, and it was also part of the higher tier of PlayStation Plus, right? If you're subscribed to PlayStation Plus Premium or whatever, it's also part of that. So, I'm sure they've gotten a few million from that, but a lot of that 10 million will be sales. So I can definitely see why it's leaked. Spoiler alert, they're making a second Death Stranding game. I can definitely see why. 10 million players for a new IP is very, very good. Overwatch 2 has hit 35 plus million players in a month. That's gargantuan. Clearly, Overwatch 2 is a ginormous success. Last time I checked, this game was still in the top 4 most played games on Xbox. Xbox isn't even its biggest platform. Its biggest platform is PC. Overwatch 2 it's just, there's no way around it. It's a huge success for Blizzard. Huge success. Now, we'll have to see if they can keep this up. I'm inclined to think that they will, because their seasons are super short. Season 2 is already coming out in just a couple weeks, and it has a new hero with it. And they're going to be very good, it looks like, every 9 weeks. New season with new heroes, new maps, new battle passes, etc. I don't think it's always going to stay top 4, right? That's impossible. You shouldn't expect that for any game except for, like, Fortnite. But I suspect that Overwatch 2 is going to have some serious staying power. It did 25 million in its first 10 days, and then it gained another 10 million on top of that, within just the next couple weeks. So Overwatch 2 is it's a beast. It's doing very well for Blizzard. And I think that might be it. I think that might be all the numbers I'm going to give you off the top. Oh, one other thing that might come up, Grand Theft Auto 5. It looks like it is finally slowing down. It just had its lowest quarter it's ever had since it came out. Now, it still shipped 1 million units, and I had some people in the comments, which is completely understandable, saying, whenever I tweeted, like, it looks like it's finally slowing down, some people being like, holy crap, I mean, it's still 1 million units in a quarter. That's incredible for a game this old. And you are not wrong. Like, almost no games, in fact, I don't know if there's any game that's from 2013 that's going to still ship 1 million units in a quarter. It's incredible. However, you have to look at how Grand Theft Auto normally performs. And up until recently, like clockwork, that thing was shipping 5 million units a quarter. Like, up until very recently, you could just expect GTA 5 is going to ship 5 million units this quarter, 5 million units this quarter. Now it did 1 million. It's the biggest, it is the lowest. Since that game came out all the way back in 2013, it's never shipped only 1 million units in a quarter. So it looks like GTA 5 may finally be slowing down. It had to at some point, right? This game couldn't have just kept selling at the volume it was forever. There's only so many people out there that are buying games. But it does look like it is finally starting to slow down. So we may be finally approaching the very, very tail end of GTA 5. So that's the main things off of the top, guys. One other thing, because it's even in my thumbnail. Sorry, I know I'm having a lot off the top, but that's because we got so many numbers. This was a very numbers-heavy week. Like, a lot. We got a lot of numbers. The other thing that's worth pointing out, PlayStation 5 for the first time ever, right? The first time since launch. This didn't even happen in its launch quarter because Switch outsold it. For the very first time, PlayStation 5 last quarter, from July to September, was the #1 hardware in shipments globally. It did 3.3 million units last quarter. Switch did 3.25 million, so they were very close. And then third behind that was Xbox Series, which we didn't get a hard number on the units, but it was about 800 million in revenue. So you can estimate that to be anywhere between 2 and 2.5 million units. So Xbox still did well, because it's not a huge amount behind, right? If it's closer to that 2.5, I mean, that's not very far behind 3.25 or 3.3. You're talking it's potentially less than 1 million unit difference between them. So still a good quarter for Xbox, but PlayStation #1. That's the first time we've seen it. It'll be interesting to see if they can repeat that during the holidays. All right, everyone. And I think that's all of the topics off of the top. I just wanted to give you all the numbers, all of the context. You guys don't have to ask me about that. You can ask me about anything you want. So if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show. It's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them down into chat, and we break down the latest news in the video game industry. There's going to be 2 ways to do that. First of all, of course, there is the free method. You just type a question, whatever you want, pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can during the stream. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be super chat option. You just type a super chat of donation. I get alerts. I immediately hit super chats, but don't feel pressured or obligated to donate in super chat. It's just a way to help support me in the channel and also guarantee that I get to your question. I'll be going for right about an hour today, because I do have a hard out because of work. So let's get rocking. All right, let's start diving into your comments and questions, because there was a lot there off the top, I know. But we got a lot of numbers. All right. Benji here with a 5 super chat kicking us off. Thank you so much, Benji. Hi, Benji. 114 million for the Switch already. Probably 8 to 10 million more this fiscal year. Are the PS2 and DS numbers still in play? Well, one thing that's interesting is Nintendo did revise down their forecast. So they put it down by, I believe, I'm doing all this off the top of my head, I think it was 2 million units. They forecast down from what they were originally forecasting. So a pretty hefty chunk, right? They went down by 2 million units. They said, though, that's mostly due to production and not really because of demand. However, it just lines up with what we've been seeing where Switch is in the decline period now. Not right, like we can clearly say that. And that's not a bad thing. The Switch has had a massively successful life, right? Like it's been so utterly successful. And there's still a lot left in the tank, right? Just because it's slowing down doesn't mean that it's over and Switch is done. I do think though, and more keeps pointing to this towards me, I do think that the next Switch is coming out next year. The fact that Miyamoto would even comment on this, right? If you saw in the investor Q&A, they were talking about it loosely, right? It wasn't anything definitive, but they were already actually responding to questions about like backwards compatibility and stuff. This tells me that Nintendo, it's coming, right? I do believe that the Switch successor is coming next year. Now, I don't know that that's going to be March or April, right? Some people are predicting very early in the year. I don't know. It could be next holiday. But I'm getting more and more confident that the next Switch is coming out next year. So I would say, Benji, if it can hit Switch, if this is true, and we don't know, Nintendo has not confirmed this. They definitely will not confirm anything until next fiscal year, right? They ain't going to say a word about it during this fiscal year. So I don't expect anything definitive. If they are going to confirm that there's a successor, that's going to come after this fiscal year's over. So the PS2 and DS numbers, the thing that's going to determine that is how it performs once the successor comes out. I don't believe that Nintendo will quickly end production on Switch 1. I think they're going to keep this thing going for years. I've talked about it before. I think Switch 2 will be more expensive. I have a feeling that's going to launch at $399, and they'll want a cheaper option alongside of it. And Switch already has such a huge install base, there's no reason to just abandon it. So I suspect most games will be cross-gen for a long period of time as well, right? You'll probably get at least 2 years of cross-gen games out of Nintendo. So I think that these numbers are probably still in play. The only way that that wouldn't be the case is if Nintendo ended Switch support faster than any of us suspect, and I don't think they'll do that. I think they're going to keep Switch very much alive, like I said, for the next 2 years. Like, even if the successor's out next year, I still think Switch will get, hardware shipments. It gives them a cheaper option on the market, and I still think it's going to be getting games too, because Nintendo's not going to just abandon 120 plus by then million install base. They're going to keep that thing rocking. So it's in play. I don't know if it's a lock, but it's in play. It's definitely still in play, Benji. The successor will determine that. If it really kills Switch 1 momentum, then things maybe get more questionable. But if it's going to be as healthy as I think, it can still do it. Kirby O. Louise with a 10 super chat. Thank you, Kirby. That is extremely generous. NVIDIA's CEO said their GPU prices will only go up in the future. Nintendo is adverse to high console prices. What do you think their next move is? Take a loss, increase software prices, go to AMD. Well, Kirby, like I said, I really think Switch 2 is $399. So, that's going to be $100 more than what Switch 1 launched at, right? That was $299. It's still $299. Now, we saw the OLED go up in price whenever they released that because it's got the better screen. But I'm pretty convinced Switch 2 will not be below $399. And I think Nintendo knows they can get away with that. Now, they may take a slight loss. Nintendo does not normally do that. We all know that, right? Nintendo is a very profit-driven company. They really do not play risky with their money financially, which is smart. Even during the Wii U generation, think about how disastrous Wii U was. Nintendo wasn't bleeding money like you might suspect during that generation. Now, they weren't hugely successful either, but put it this way, if you saw a PlayStation perform like how the Wii U did, Sony would have practically went bankrupt, right? Because they're rolling the dice so much more with how much money and investment they have on things and how big their budgets get and stuff. Nintendo actually survived Wii U fairly okay. Now, it wasn't great. 3DS really helped them during that time, but you get what I'm going at. They're a very profit-driven company. So if they take a loss on hardware, I think it would be very slight. And I think one way they will counteract this is launching at $399. I think the idea that Switch 2 will be below that is very extraordinarily unlikely. I would just go in assuming this thing's going to be $400. I think they can get away with that because PS5 is $500 or more. Series X is $500. Yes, Series S is $299. but I don't think that's direct competition really with Switch 2, what that will be. So I think those are the two things, Kirby. I don't think that they're going to go up in price on games. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I don't think you see Nintendo go to $70 games yet, because I think they know that so many people that have families buy their games. That might make things a little trickier for them if they go to $70. You never know. It could be wrong. But I think the two ways they'll mostly do it is go up $100, right? It's not a small amount. Switch 1's $299. I think this is going to be $399. And maybe take a slight loss on hardware. They won't eat a huge amount. Nintendo just won't do that. There's no way they're going to eat $100 per console like it's apparently Microsoft's doing. No way they'll do that. But would they be willing to take a slight $25, $30 loss on the hardware? Maybe. Maybe they'd be willing to do that. And thank you for that super chat. It's very kind, Kirby. $10. Oh, wow. We had a few more super chats coming in. Thank you, guys. Anthony Johnson. Oh, my God. I need to get back to your email. As soon as I saw your name, I just remembered. Benji says it's been tricky to contact you on Twitter. Do you have a business email I could message you at? My message is a bit time sensitive. Anthony, literally, I kid you not, the minute I get off of this chat, I'm responding to you. Okay? As soon as I saw your name, I just remembered it. The minute I'm off this chat, I'm responding to you, Anthony. You did not need to do a super chat to do that. But yes, I will respond to you, Anthony, the minute that I do. Give me again what your name is. Well, I don't know if you want to do that. If you're comfortable with putting your name, not your real name, but if you're comfortable with putting your Twitter handle in here, do that so I know which one it is because I have so many messages. But I will, yes, Anthony. The minute the stream ends, I will contact you back. Matt Duffy with a 2 super chat. Benji-Sales live chat. Let's go. What is up, Matt? Great to see you, man. Thank you for the hype as always. The positive encouragement as always. You're the man, Matt. I hope you're having a great day, buddy. JCat with a 3 super chat with just a super cute puppy sticker saying, how's it going? Well, JCat, how are you? I hope you're doing great. Thank you for helping mod the channel as always. You're amazing. And I'm doing good. Actually, my daughter's sick. That's a bummer. She's got, it looks like RSV, so that's a bummer. She's pretty sick right now. Had to stay home from school. But she had doctor's appointment today. They said that they think she can go back tomorrow. So she's not doing too bad, but poor girl's coughing a bunch. Besides that, things are good though, right? That things have been pretty good lately. But hopefully my daughter feels better soon. Split End 89 with a 2 super chat. Thank you so much again, Split End, for helping mod the channel like JCat and being a great friend, buddy. You should be wielding Thor's hammer on stream. Well, funny you mentioned that. Got this bad boy right here, baby. Ragnarok has been amazing. Playing it, it's incredible. Loving the collector's edition. The hammer is sick. The whole thing, awesome. Yeah, dude, Ragnarok, dope. It's awesome. I do have the hammer right next to me. I got it. All right, super chats are cleared, guys. Thank you so much for all those super chats. That was a bunch. The hammer's pretty big, too, guys. Like, it's pretty big. I was impressed with the collectors. Okay. Johnny G22 here with a free question. What's up, Benji boy? Hope all is well. Who do you got this weekend winning, Poirier or Chandler? Great UFC card this weekend. Don't worry, video game guys. I'll get right back to video games, but I love MMA just as much as I love video games. Poirier and Chandler to me is very much a toss-up. Here's what I'll say. I think if Chandler fights smart, that Chandler can actually win this fight because I think he's more explosive than Dustin, and I also think that his wrestling is incredible. I think, though, that if Chandler goes out there and fights dumb, which I love watching Chandler fight, but as we all know, does not fight the smartest, for better or worse. Now, for fans, it brings massive entertainment value. This guy is quite literally never in a boring fight. You know, if Michael Chandler's booked on a card, it's going to be exciting. There's just no way around it. The dude doesn't know how to fight except for to make it a crazy, exciting fight. So he can still fight exciting, but he needs to fight a little smart. If he fights smart and he uses his athleticism, his wrestling, does mix it up with the striking, but doesn't go crazy with it, mixes it up, I think Chandler can win. However, if Chandler goes in there and just throws caution to the wind, like he so often does, and decides, I'm just going to get in a slugfest, I do think that Poirier is the better technical boxer of the two, and Chandler can catch him in a situation like that, because Dustin doesn't have a granite chin, he's got a good chin. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he has a bad chin, but he's been knocked out. We've seen him get knocked out. Conor McGregor knocked him out. Michael Johnson knocked him out. He's been KO'd, right? That doesn't mean he's easy to KO. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he can be knocked out. We know that because we've seen it happen. So Chandler's got the power and the speed. He could catch him and knock him out in a fight like that, but I would, if it just turns into a crazy slugfest, I would favor Dustin because I just think he's the more technical boxer of the two, and I think over time that would, catch up to Chandler. So it just depends. To me, it depends on how this fight goes. If Chandler's smart, he can win it. If it's crazy, I will edge it towards Dustin because I think he'll be a little more defensively sound than Chandler will be. Man, I think we had another super chat come in. Holy cow. Thanks, guys. I do. Ladace here with a 2 super chat. The Game Award noms soon. Which games will make the Game of the Year cut? Okay, so Game of the Year nominations are about to come out Monday. The front runners to me, I think there's normally 6. I would say absolutely locks are Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. There's just no way those 2 will not be. So that's 2 of your 6 already. There's just 0% chance those are not nominated. I would say that after that it gets tricky. Like, honestly, there's only 2 hardcore front runners. There's a lot of other ones that are probably deserving. I will not be surprised if Xenoblade Chronicles 3 gets a nomination. It reviewed very, very well. It is a JRPG, though, so I don't know. But it's possible. So I would put Xenoblade in the possible category. Not a lock, but possible. I think Immortality has a very strong shot of being nominated. We've talked about this before. Immortality wasn't the most popular game with general gamers, but critics absolutely adored the game. And also the developer behind it developed Her Story, which was very successful at the Game Awards and got a lot of nominations. So the developer already has a history at the Game Awards. Immortality, again, just like Xenoblade's not a lock for me, but I could absolutely see it being the indie darling that gets a lot of nominations this year. So I would put Immortality potentially in there. Horizon Forbidden West honestly has a pretty strong chance of being nominated. Big AAA game, 88 Metacritic. It's very possible. And then it gets tricky, man. It gets tricky. There's not a ton this year that are hardcore front runner options. Like some years, it's like, oh, we got like these 4 or 5 games that are locks. This year, there's only 2 locks. Like the only locks are Elden Ring and God of War. After that, who knows? A Plague Tale could sneak in there. Doesn't have a super high Metacritic, but a lot of people did really love it. Especially for the story and stuff. And as we know, Game Awards a lot of time kind of priority, not always, but a lot of story heavy games get nominations. You could see a Plague Tale sneak in there. There's a few that could sneak, but the only locks are God of War and Elden Ring. One of those 2 is winning Game of the Year. Like, there's just no doubt. It's going to be one of those 2 games. So those are the 2 I only feel certain of, and a few more after that could sneak in, but it's hard to say, honestly. It's hard to say what the other 4 will be. Highlander001 with a 5 super chat. Take time for your mental health. Yes, it's always important, Highlander, and thank you for the super chat. It's always very important. Outside of Microsoft, Apple, and Google, can anyone else make an acquisition the size of Activision? That would be interested in doing something like that? No. It's going to be one of the tech giants. Like, there's a reason why Microsoft's the one buying Activision. The size acquisition of this, it will be a tech giant if someone buys it, right? Like, let's say EA goes for sale, right? It would be a tech giant that would buy EA. Tencent, at one point, you could think maybe could do something like that, but Tencent's being brutalized. Like, how much has their stock tanked? Let's look at this. Let's look at Tencent stock. I wonder if it's improved at all, because I haven't looked at it in a little bit, but I know it was getting absolutely obliterated at one point. Yeah, year to date, it's down almost 50%, dude. Tencent's down almost 50% year to date on their stock price. They're down 46.18%. I don't know that Tencent is in the kind of, scenario right now where they could make a massive purchase like this. So Highlander, if anyone buys someone similar size of Activision, which there's actually not many left out there, but you would assume someone like EA, that's going to be the closest. It'll be a tech giant if someone does it. Yes, it'll be Apple, Google, Amazon, someone like that. Yeah, someone like that. Sony will not. I don't think it's impossible Sony buys a publisher. We've talked about this a lot. There's a few publishers that have much lower market caps I could see Sony potentially making a play for. But something the size of Activision or EA, there's not many companies that just have that much money just sitting around to throw at it. It's going to be a tech giant that has that kind of money. And then Anthony Johnson, okay, awesome with your DM, Mercy Night Pub. Okay, cool. I will respond to you, Anthony, literally the minute the stream ends. The minute it ends, I'm immediately going in my DMs and I'm responding. Thank you, Anthony. All right, super chats are cleared. Let's go back to your free questions, guys. Iber Romero, man, videos of people in stores to buy God of War Ragnarok, the game being #1 in many retail store websites, the reviews, the people commenting of the game being a masterpiece in socials, predictions for sales numbers. How big do you think God of War will be, and do you think this is the end of what's next? Okay, so clearly it's not going to be the last God of War. I tweeted, I think there's a very strong argument you can make God of War is Sony's #1 most important IP now that they own, that's single player. If you want to factor in other stuff, you could probably put Destiny 2 above it. I know that sounds kind of funny. Some people that are like hardcore Sony fans in the past and are used to Sony might be like, what? Destiny? Guys, Destiny generates a lot of money. There's a reason they bought Bungie for, what was it, $3 billion? Because it makes a lot of money. Big service game. So it's hard to really compare it to something like Destiny, which is also multi-platform, right? That's multi-platform and it's a service game. That's a little bit of a different scenario. But if we're going to just talk about like the big single-player games that Sony's known for, this was not always the case by any means. If you go back to how God of War performed on PS2 and PS3, it was always an important franchise. But #1, no. Uncharted was bigger, for example, at one period of time. You had The Last of Us being a bigger deal for a period of time. I think you can make the argument right now, currently. I think God of War is probably their most important and successful single-player IP that they own. More than Horizon. I think those numbers are going to come in much higher than Forbidden West. Forbidden West ended up actually having pretty decent legs. We have seen that. Launch, though, to me for Ragnarok is looking way bigger. And Spider-Man they don't own. Spider-Man is licensed. They do not own the Spider-Man IP. Now, they own the movie rights, but they do not own the video game rights. They do not have any video game rights. They're licensing it from Marvel. So I think they're going to make more God of War. Now, how that's going to play out, I don't know. How it's going to work, I don't know. But there will be more God of War games. There's just no way that they kill their most successful franchise. I mean, you never know. They could. Sometimes people do that, but I think that'd be a huge mistake. With the way, like, a lot of people only got into God of War with God of War 2018. So that would mean for a lot of people, they only really got 2 God of War games. That would be very dumb to abandon it. And I hate to say that. It might be insultful to some of the people at Santa Monica that are the creatives, maybe that want to end it. Do not do that. Big mistake. Because you got a lot of people that just joined the franchise literally 1 game ago until Ragnarok. You need to give them a few more games. So there's going to be more. Now, in terms of launch sales predictions, like I mentioned, way bigger than Forbidden West. I'm pretty darn confident this will be the biggest launch since PlayStation 5 launched. So since back in 2020, I don't believe they've had a single PlayStation game launch bigger than this. That includes Miles Morales. I expect this to be bigger than Miles Morales. Now, will it beat The Last of Us? That's the big question. It's a big question, and I honestly can't tell you because it's so hard to say with digital sales nowadays. Physical looks like it's doing extremely well. A lot of people buying this game physically, but as we know, it's really switched to digital. Digital is a huge part of the market, and we just don't know those numbers, right? We can't see them. Sony doesn't give any visibility to that, and really no publisher does outside of like rankings charts and periodic updates. So that is going to be what makes or breaks if it does 4 million. I am 1,000% sure this is going to do over 3 million. To me, there's no question in my mind now after seeing some of the launch stuff. The 4 million record of The Last of Us Part 2, I am leaning towards yes, it will, but I don't know for that for sure. Eber, it's really, we don't know what digital's like, but there's no reason for me to believe that digital's not also gargantuan. So I think so. Eber, I think the 4 million Last of Us record is very much in play. Very much in play. And The only hardcore prediction I would give, like where I'm very certain of, biggest PlayStation launch since the PS5 released. I'm very confident in that. Much bigger than Horizon Forbidden West, bigger than Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's going to be the biggest PlayStation launch at least since 2020. Cameron Swear, Splatoon 3 right at about 8 million in 3 weeks. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. Woo Boy Nutty, Switch Sports looking crazy as well. In general, what game or games are you most impressed with in terms of sales from Nintendo this gen? Oh, man, if we're going to go across the whole generation, dude, there's so many you could say. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is ridiculous. You could say, I mean, it's so hard to ignore that. Animal Crossing, obviously, is just ridiculous. Switch in general is just an absolute behemoth. I will say it's interesting how Splatoon 3 is so Japan heavy still. It is interesting how this game is an utter phenomenon in Japan and it's not in the West. Now, it doesn't mean it's not successful in the West. They ship millions of units in the West. It's a big game in the West. But what I mean is you very rarely see this nowadays where a game is so heavy Japan still. Like, that's almost unheard of, guys. Like, not just for Nintendo, for almost any publisher outside of, like, maybe small JRPGs. Almost no series like are getting the bulk of their sales from Japan. Like, most of them now come from the West, and Japan can still be hugely important, but there's almost not, like I said, smaller JRPGs and visual novels and stuff. This is different. We're talking about the big games. There's like almost none that the bulk of their sales are coming from Japan. Not even Monster Hunter anymore, guys. Even Monster Hunter, which was always so Japan heavy, Japan's still a huge chunk of Monster Hunter sales. But if you look at Monster Hunter World, it ain't Japan, it's the West that has the lead, and then Japan's still a huge chunk. Splatoon is one of those rare outliers in modern gaming where it's still mostly Japan that carries it. It's big in the West, guys, not underselling it, millions of units in the West. But Japan is like crazy for Splatoon. So pretty interesting there on that. Overall, almost 8 million in, like you said, 3 weeks is just crazy. No matter how you slice it, it's ridiculous numbers. I would say the other one that I'm very impressed with is Kirby. I mentioned it off the top. Over 5 million units already for Kirby. Most successful Kirby game ever. If we're just talking about recent releases, what I'm impressed with. And that's incredible. I'm very impressed with how Kirby did. I think that's very, very good. This is going to go on to do over 6 million units. Could do even over 7 million units, depending on how legs are. You know, who knows how high this can go eventually. So Kirby is the one I'm most impressed with recently because I think we all expected Splatoon to be ginormous. It's even better than I thought, no doubt about it, but Kirby did very well. Javier Colper, when do you think the next God of War game will be announced? First Corey's game, then God of War. Yeah, it'll be a while. It will be on PS5 or PS6, and what can they improve? I'm playing this game and nothing comes close. Maybe Elden Ring, but in the technical aspect, God of War is leagued ahead of any other game. Do you think Sony's like, well, let's milk this franchise? Well, like I mentioned, I don't consider God of War being milked now because 2018 really did like reboot this franchise. And I know it's a direct sequel, right? I know it's not a true reboot because, you know, it's still the same story. Like everything that happened before the 2018 game is still canon. A lot of times when you think reboot, it means like, you know, they're just restarting. This isn't technically a reboot, but it's so radically different than old God of War, and so many people played this game for the first time. Like, seriously, God of War now has over 23 million copies. Before that, like, the biggest God of War games were doing, like, 5 million, 6 million, you know, like, I think God of War 3 maybe got to 10 million eventually. Let me see that, because I'm not sure off the top of my head. I want to say maybe, but I don't even think that did. Yeah, the last number I'm seeing is like 5 million. 5 million-ish. I mean, think about the difference in that. Going from like 5 million copies to 23 million. So it's not real. I know it can kind of seem like a milking if, you know, you've been a fan of God of War for a long time. But for so many people, they never played a God of War game before 2018. So continuing this series to me isn't really milking, even if there's been a lot of games, because so many people are new to this franchise. It would almost feel like killing it prematurely if you stopped, because you just now got this enormous fan base that you didn't have before. So I definitely think you're going to get more God of War, but it's going to be a while. You won't see the next God of War until after they announce Corey's new IP. We already know that they're staffing up for that game. We already know it's in pre-production. I'm sure the next God of War is not in pre-production yet, right? We know Ragnarok was like a huge challenge to finish anyways. They haven't even started on the next God of War game. They may have thoughts about what they want to do, but they haven't even really started it. Whereas Corey's game is in development right now. I'm sure it's very pre-production. I doubt this thing is in like full-scale production, but Corey's game is at least already spinning up. So I would say you see Corey's game next, the new IP, and then you see that the next God of War game, whatever that ends up being, probably late in this cycle. I do think it'll still be on PS5, but probably not for like 4 years. So late in this cycle. Late in this cycle for the next God of War. And then in terms of what they can improve, I mean, to me, this isn't a criticism because I really loved 2018, but the one thing I can say while playing Ragnarok, it is very similar to 2018. Very. I mean, it is very similar. I would say that this is, and again, this is going to sound, some people might take this as like an insult, and I actually don't feel that way now having played it, but I can see this being a complaint. Ragnarok is a very safe sequel, and that's okay. Sometimes if you struck gold the first time, you don't need to reshape the wheel, right? If you've already had a huge hit that went over well and everyone loves it, you don't need to get too crazy and too risky. I will say, though, that Ragnarok is a very safe sequel. It is very similar to 2018. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because I adored God of War 2018 and I'm adoring Ragnarok so far. But I will say I can see that being a legit complaint that some people could have. It is extremely similar, guys. And I don't mean like DLC. You saw that whole God of War Ragnarok's a DLC. No, this is a full-fledged sequel. But it is a very safe sequel, and that's okay. I would say the one thing they could potentially do to improve whatever's next is maybe just take a little more risks with it in terms of like gameplay and changing some stuff up. Ragnarok to me feels like, so far I haven't beat it, but it feels like perfecting the 2018 formula. If the next game they want to get like risky with it, maybe introduce some really, really new things, because 2018 doesn't really. It feels like this Ragnarok doesn't really. It's an extreme refinement of what 2018 was. So that would be the only thing I can think really, is maybe just introduce some very, very new stuff. Make sure there's no super chats. I think there might have been one. There is. Yes, one. Necro Exid, I never know how to pronounce your name, but it's great to see you with a 2 super chat. Hi, Benji. Pokemon Scarlet Violet launch sales expectations. Freaking crazy, dude. So I'm sure you guys that are in the sales community here have seen the pre-order numbers in Japan. I mean, it's tracking to be the biggest launch ever in Japan by pre-orders, unless I'm mistaken. I follow Japan, but I'm not an expert on it like some of you guys are. But I believe I saw Pierre tweeting that it is on track to be the most pre-ordered game ever for Switch in Japan. I believe. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe that's what his tweets were saying, because I follow Pierre. And I believe that's what it is, that the pre-orders are tracking for the biggest, on Switch at least. It's going to be crazy, dude. You know, I was telling people this like a long time ago. Back whenever they were first showing Scarlet and Violet, I was like, this is going to be real big. It looks very good. I'm expecting this thing to be way bigger than Sword and Shield. Lifetime, I don't know. That depends on how good the game is. But the launch, I'm expecting way bigger than Arceus even. And Arceus was a behemoth at launch. This is looking beastly, Necro. And exact units, I don't know. Because Japan, to me, could swing things so wildly. If it's really tracking to be the most pre-ordered game ever on Switch in Japan, who knows how high that ceiling is. Same thing in US. US is looking crazy, dude. It's going to be huge, Necro. Probably the biggest Switch launch we've ever seen since launch. Probably. I'm not 1,000% sure on that. Who knows? We've seen some gargantuan ones, right? We've seen Animal Crossing do some crazy numbers. We saw the original Sword and Shield do some crazy numbers. But I do think the install base is so big right now, Necro. This is like lined up to be the Switch holiday game. I think we're probably looking at the biggest Switch launch to date. Probably. Looking crazy. Highlander001 with a 10 super chat. Highlander is very generous. Thank you. You do not have to do that. I have heard rumblings that the Sony CEO is not happy with Sony Pictures. I have heard this as well, Highlander. Yes, this is. I believe this is an accurate rumor. Yes, Spider-Man and the Bib D. I think that's a typo, but I'm not 100% sure which movie. Movies made money, but Sony Pictures has been a headache for Sony. Do you see Sony selling it off? There are rumblings of this. Yes, there are rumblings, Highlander. There are. There are rumblings that Sony is looking to potentially sell the movie division. We'll see. I'm not like 1,000% sure that this is going to happen. I'm not going to say that I'm like, I think of it as a lock. But, yeah, Necro says the moment, the best 3 days is 6.5 million by Legends Arceus. Yep, and I expect this to be bigger than Arceus. So, yep, Necro, I agree. I think it's going to be the biggest Switch launch. I do think so. Because tracking to me looks better than Arceus, and Arceus was a beast. So, Necro, I agree. I think we're probably looking at bigger than Arceus, which is crazy how big that was. But anyways, the Sony Pictures thing, Highlander, yes, there are rumblings of this. I can say absolutely there are rumblings of this. I have heard them as well. A lot of people that follow the movie industry are hearing these rumblings also. We'll see. I don't know if they actually will sell. A lot of people want to sell right now in general. That's what's going down, guys. A lot of people in entertainment want to sell. Whether it's movies, whether it's games, a lot of people want to sell. I think there's various reasons for that. I think a lot of market uncertainty. I think a lot of people worried about economic situations coming. I think that the changing landscape in entertainment is a huge thing, right? With movies and stuff, with streaming, with subscriptions rising within gaming. There's just a lot of uncertainty around entertainment in the future, and a lot of people want to sell. This is known. Anyone that follows entertainment that is in the rumblings, rumor space knows a lot of people want to sell. A lot. So I wouldn't be surprised. Highlander, again, don't consider this a lock by any means. I will be 0% surprised if they never sell. But there are rumblings of this, yes. I'm getting some alerts about my stream. Hopefully you guys can still see me. I'm getting some alerts that's getting a little choppy. I've been having a little bit of internet issues lately. I'm not sure why. Benji with a 5 super chat. Benji, could the rumored Apple VR headset challenge the PSVR 2? Do you think Apple could have secured Alex, as it's bizarrely a no-show for PSVR so far? I think Apple, if they really do have a VR headset, it's probably a very different market. It does seem that Sony is doubling down on like PSVR 2 truly being about high-end VR. I suspect, Benji, that if Apple has a headset, its main competitor will be Oculus Quest 2. So I would say I don't consider it that much of a challenge to PSVR 2. The main thing that's going to challenge PSVR 2 is price. Like, that's the biggest thing. I don't think it's anything to do with, like, Quest even, because, yes, Quest is super popular, but, again, it does seem like Sony is going to just, like, double, triple down on PSVR 2 is about super high-end enthusiast VR. And Quest, I love my Quest. I have a Quest 2. I've used it a ton of times. I will be honest, even though it's a great experience, it is not high-end VR. The visuals are solid for a standalone unit, but it's not going to be anything comparable to what PSVR 2 can do. So I suspect Apple's VR headset will be more of a challenge directly to the Quest 2 or Quest 3, because apparently that's coming soon-ish. I think by like next year sometime, the Quest 3 is leaked. So I think that's the bigger challenge. The biggest challenge for PSVR 2 is simply its price tag. Like I've said before, I suspect this thing to sell out at launch. I think there's going to be enough hardcore people that want it day one that they're going to buy it regardless of price, whether this was $400 or $600. I think there's a bunch of people that were just day oneers no matter what. The big question for PSVR 2 is, how's this selling 6 to 8 months after launch? That we do not know. And I think the biggest thing that's going to impact that potentially, I don't know, could be massively successful. But if there's a negative to PSVR 2 and we do see it start to heavily decline, I think it's going to be that price. I don't think it would be an Apple set or an Oculus. I just think it would be strictly the thing's $550 freaking bucks. It's a lot of money, even if it's good value, right? We had this conversation, I think, last chat. PSVR 2 is actually good value. You're getting an amazing piece of hardware for $550. Like, that part is definitely true. But it's still $550. That's still a lot of money for your average consumer. Just your average Joe Blow, that's a lot of freaking money. So we'll see. That's the main challenge, I think, for PSVR 2. I could see, though, an Apple VR headset being a huge challenge for Oculus. I could definitely see that. I could very much see that. Oculus right now basically has like a monopoly, not truly, but like a monopoly on standalone VR because the Quest is so popular. Apple, though, as we know, their consumers love Apple. If that happens, that could be a real challenge to Quest. It really could, especially with all the issues that Meta is having. Highlander 1 with a 2 super chat meant Bond movies. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Injured hand typing on my cell. Well, I hope your hand's okay, but yeah, Bond, yeah. Yep. Like you said, there are rumblings. There are definitely rumblings about Sony maybe wanting to get out of their movie business, but we'll see. We'll see. Baumangani, I'm just saying this. Benji-Sales was brought up on Sacred Symbols 227. Was wondering if you heard it. I did not, unfortunately. Those guys have been very nice to me. I was even on Sacred Symbols Plus one time. Listen, I know people are going to have various opinions on various people. All I can say is that the guys at Sacred Symbols have always been very nice and supportive of me. And I really appreciate that. So it's very awesome to see. That is very awesome to see. Shout out to them. I very much appreciate that. They've been very kind to me. Even had me on Sacred Symbols Plus one time. Early on in my, when I didn't have much of a following. So I really appreciate that. Where were we at on the free questions? Bigelow. Benji, what do you think of Xbox's marketing strategy for its games, and do you feel it needs to do better, like how PS does their marketing? Also, would direct style presentations work for Xbox? Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that Xbox needs to do better about marketing stuff. One sec, let me take a drink. Now, I think that Xbox has an amazing social media team. I think that the social media running their Game Pass account, hilarious, right? I know that Stein is a big part of this, but there's a whole team. I think their social media side, like, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, I think that they have great social media team. I do think, though, that Bigelow, there is a lot to be desired in terms of how they market their games in terms of presentations. They do way too few of them. It's essentially just a big E3 show and, E3 show. And outside of that, not much. Maybe they'll show like a trailer or two at Game Awards. They need their own direct or state of play style. They just do. They're way behind the competition on that. I'm just being honest. And I have a lot of friends at Xbox. Well, whenever I say friends, social media friends. I interact with a ton of people from Xbox that work there. I consider myself to have good relationships with them. I think they feel the same way. So none of this is meant at all as an insult. It's just, people can be critical of me too, right? If there's one area that I do feel that Xbox's marketing is just way behind Nintendo and Sony, they don't show their games enough, like in terms of like presentations to the fans. And Sony didn't have a great year this year either, right? They completely skipped a showcase. So Sony ain't perfect by any means. However, they do a lot better job of more consistently showing you stuff, right? You get the big individual state of plays for like their exclusives, right? You get like the big, each time they have like a massive exclusive a lot of times. Ragnarok was a little bit different, but usually you have like that dedicated state of play that shows you like 10 or 15 minutes of the game really close to launch to drive hype and excitement. They have multiple states of plays per year and then a showcase traditionally. Again, I know this year was different, guys, but we're just talking about traditionally. Nintendo does a great job with their directs, usually a few times a year, giving you updates, showing things. Microsoft is just vastly behind in that category. They should not be having one showcase per year, especially with all these studios now. You should be getting 2 to 3 shows per year. That doesn't mean they're all the E3 size, but you should be getting another showcase direct state of play style like you should. You really should with this many games and this many studios now under them. They are way behind the competition on that. So I would say if there's one area, Bigelow, I think, like if I could give them a little criticism, it would be that. I hope they improve on that. I think they need to be showing stuff more often. And I think COVID impacted a lot of this, guys. We've talked about in this chat a lot. The pandemic screwed game development royally. I think that's why you never got a PlayStation Showcase this year. I just think their first-party teams were not in position to show anything. And if they're not ready to show, you can't have a showcase. So let's see how the things start to shake out in the next year or two as things really improve. If this is still going on, like I would say 2 years from now, if you still basically only have a summer showcase from Xbox and then very little outside of that window, I would consider that a mistake. Yes, I would consider that a marketing mistake, especially when you have a subscription service like Game Pass. If you really want to keep that Game Pass engagement high and people subscribing, you need to be giving them shows and showing them what they're getting with that subscription. Not just a tweet that shows them pictures, right? It's cool to have a little tweet that goes out and it says, look at these 6 games coming. If you really want to generate hype, you're having like 3, state of play styles showing you Game Pass games per year. Javier Culper. Oh, wait, I already did that one. Casual Noob Gamer, do you think game companies will load the end of the year again next year because of delays? I just think next year is loaded no matter what. Or do you think companies want their games released close to holidays so there's no drop-off in price? Looks like Nintendo is hoarding systems in Japan as the sales are much higher this week in Japan, according to a tweet by Player Essence. And then, how are you doing, by the way? I know for anxiety and depression, I wrap myself in games as many others. How many games would you say you started, and how many games have you completed this year? And does it go up as your anxiety and depression gets worse? Well, my depression this year has actually been amazing. Like, I've done a lot of things to kind of eradicate it. I don't want to say it's completely gone, but exercising, lifting weights, all of that kind of stuff has very much helped with that. And just also some mental state changes and ways I approach things. I would say Casual Noob Gamer, my depression is like almost at an all-time low out of the last like years and years of my life. So that's been great. However, I did have a really bad spike of anxiety like a month ago, or a few weeks ago. I talked to you guys about that here on the chat. And that was rough. I always get it this time of year. Once we go into like the fall and winter season, I always get crazy anxiety for like a month or two as we transition into it. It just happens every year. Games definitely help me. They definitely help, and I don't consider that a bad thing. Some people would consider it hiding from your anxiety or depression. I don't agree with that. I think that sometimes you need an escape. Games definitely help with that. Now, you also need to, figure out why you're feeling these ways, because usually there's a reason, right? Usually, whether you're aware of it or not, subconsciously there is a reason you're having this anxiety and depression. And that's one thing that's very much helped me over the last few years really improve it, is taking time to really self-analyze and be like, why are you feeling this way? Like, what's happening in your life that's causing it? Because it's even if it feels random, because someone that's experienced this for a long time, a lot of times it feels random. It's almost never random. There's usually something that is causing it. So you do need to face those things, but having an escape is good as well. Now, in terms of releases next year, I just expect the entire year to be completely colossally loaded. And you can already see that just looking at the first 4 months of the year. Next year is going to be utterly insane because so many games were delayed the last 2 years. I honestly expect next year to be wall-to-wall releases. I'm sure some stuff will still get delayed, right? It's not like delays are just gone now forever. But I do think next year is probably the most stacked year we've had in games in forever, like a long time, because there are so many games, guys, that got delayed the last 2 years. It's going to be giga-packed. I think just wall-to-wall. So expect a massive year of new releases next year. Joseki, what's up, Joseki? Great to see you. Benji, it looks like the Square Enix strategy of dumping every AA game all at once isn't paying off, is it? No, it's not. It's a bummer. We had talked about this before launch, like once we had seen all these games coming. And I was saying I really hoped some of them were successful because I really wanted to see a return of these like non-AAA budget JRPGs coming back like the PS2 era from Square Enix. Like that's what I was hoping. I was like, you can't assume they're all going to be successful. But I was like, hopefully, like 2 of these do pretty darn well, so that way, like Square Enix will keep, going after this strategy of okay, we can focus on some stuff that's not Final Fantasy and that's not Dragon Quest, and they're better about this on Switch, but on PlayStation and Xbox, not as much. It's really just like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and Forspoken, like huge AAA games. But it doesn't appear to have worked out. We'll find out whenever they give their earnings. Maybe some of this stuff's doing better than we think, but it does not look to me like Star Ocean did well. Does not look to me like Diofield Chronicles did as well, and it does not look to me like Valkyrie Elysium did well. Doesn't look like any of them did well. If they all 3 bombed, that could really scare Square Enix from pursuing this in the future. So we'll have to see Joseki, but it doesn't look good. I would agree. Does not look good. I think we had a super chat. I'm getting close to the end because I do have a hard out. I'm going to go for like 10 more minutes, guys. We're in like the last 10 minutes. Lorenzo with a super chat. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. That is incredibly kind of you. Xbox should divide their summer showcase by 2 because having a 2-hour presentation is just too much, and then you don't remember most of the games because there are too many games in just one show. It's not a bad idea. I do think having the one big showcase per year is I'm down with that, but they need, more outside of that as well. So if some of that is taking away from the summer showcase and making it a bit shorter, maybe like you said, like an hour and a half, hour and 15, and you spread out a little bit more, maybe that's a good idea. The main thing with Microsoft is, in my opinion, especially once Activision Blizzard goes through, you would think they would just have enough projects that like they have to have more showcases because the number of studios they're going to have is going to be astronomical. I mean, it's already kind of crazy, and that's before Activision Blizzard. Lorenzo, like I said, if in the next 2 years this doesn't change, I do think something's going wrong over there in terms of marketing because you're just going to have so many freaking studios. How do you plan on marketing all of this unless you're having semi-regular showcases? And again, they don't all need to be that 2-hour crazy blowout, but like 30-minute direct state of play style, 30, 45 minutes, 2 or more of those in the year. I feel like you have to do that. Like, so we'll see, Lorenzo. It's going to be interesting to see. And thank you for that super chat. All right, and like I said, we are closing in, guys. I'm going to go for like right around 10 minutes and we're out. Zinfamous, Benji, another stacked pay-per-view card in a row for UFC this Saturday. It's an incredible pay-per-view. Absolutely incredible. Who you got in the big 3 fights between Izzy and Pereira, Carla versus Weili Zhang, and Poirier versus Chandler? I got Dustin, Zhang, and Izzy. All right, Zinfamous, let me go real quick through these. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up. Now, I talked a bit about Poirier versus Chandler and how I thought it could go either way. If I have to pick, right, we're doing picks now. Not just my thoughts on the fight, picks. I will pick Dustin because, like I said, I think Chandler's going to eventually get too wild. And I think Dustin will catch him once it gets wild. I could see this being a crazy fight. I mean, hot take, Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler in a crazy fight. That's like saying that, no way, was Chandler versus Gaethje going to be a crazy fight? We all knew that was going to be a complete chaos before it even started. This is very similar. Dustin is a little bit more defensively minded than Gaethje and Chandler are, but he can also get in just absolute slugfests. We've seen it with like Dan Hooker and stuff. Yeah, he can get in them. And even the Conor fights, were even the ones he won, they were kind of a slugfest until they finished. So Dustin can find himself there too. I think at some point this fight just gets wild. And once it gets wild, I just do think Dustin will get him. When that will be, I don't know. And I could see the exact opposite. I could see Chandler knocking him out in the first 2 minutes because that's just the way Chandler is. The dude hits like a freight train, and he's so explosive that the biggest danger here for Dustin is that first round. He's got to be careful that first round. I think if Dustin gets too wild in that first 5 minutes, that could be very bad. But if Dustin is composed, fights smart in that first round, and drags Chandler, not that Chandler's going to gas in round 2, but he's not going to be quite as explosive as he is in that first round. He needs to make sure that he drags this into that second and third rounds, because the first round is where he's in the most danger. Chandler is like one of the most dangerous men in the UFC in the first round, right? You got him, you got Francis Ngannou, you got Conor. Conor's a very notorious first round finisher, but Chandler's like right there too. He's like right in that pack of most dangerous guys in round 1. So I will pick Dustin. Carla versus Weili. Weili's going to run through her, I think. You know, Carla seems like a very nice person. Every interview I see with Carla, she seems like a completely kind person, but Weili is a freaking beast. I think Weili Zhang runs through her. I think Weili finishes her in the first or second round. I'm sorry, Carla, but I just think she gets finished, probably ground and pound or KO in the first or second round. Izzy versus Pereira, to me, is almost a coin flip because I think that Izzy is the more technical of the two, and Pineda is very technical, to be clear. You're talking about two elite strikers. But if I just had to give one of them most elite, I would say Izzy is more technical, but Pineda has like nuclear KO power. Like he touches people and they just lose their consciousness. Like he's one of those guys almost like Deontay Wilder. I'm not going to say he's at the level of Deontay, but he's got that similar type of power where you just see Pineda touch people and it doesn't even look like the hardest shot and they're just gone. Like their consciousness is boom, gone. He can do that to Izzy. He's done it before. We know he can do it. I will pick Izzy's Infamous, but I have no confidence in it. I'm picking Izzy because I'm just assuming he can stay distanced enough, pick at Pineda enough to win a decision, I think. I'll be surprised if he finishes him, but you never know. But at the same time, Pineda just like insta-KOing him would 0% surprise me. But those are my picks. I'll go, I think we have the same picks. Yeah, Dustin, Zhang, and Izzy. But two of those I'm not confident about. The only one I'm confident about is Wei Li. Benji, any thoughts on the NCSoft developed Horizon MMO? I think it's a little interesting. I don't know that it's a great idea, but I could be wrong. Whenever I saw this, I was surprised because I'm surprised anytime I see any company make an MMO nowadays. Like, probably the riskiest genre, like flat out. If you want to just like gamble money to the highest degree, I would say make an MMO because they're extremely expensive. Like the cost is unbelievably high to make an MMO, and the success rate of MMOs are maybe the lowest in all of the industry in terms of like, that doesn't mean you can't. If you happen to get a successful MMO like Final Fantasy XIV is or like World of Warcraft is, we're talking unbelievable amounts of money long term. So I can see why they are so enticing if you're a publisher being like, yeah, but if we nail it, we could have huge amounts of money for the next 10 years from it, right? Elder Scrolls Online has become very successful with time. But man, that failure rate is high for the cost. So Benji, my thoughts are I think a Horizon MMO could be very cool. But I would say, Benji, I am very surprised that they're doing this. Just because MMOs are risky business, bro. Risky business. So we'll see. We haven't even seen the game yet. I'm not going to declare it'll be a failure. I will say I was surprised to see it. I'm 0% surprised to see a multiplayer Horizon game. That makes absolute sense. I think something like Monster Hunter makes a lot more sense than an MMO and is also going to be cheaper to make than an MMO. But we'll see. If it's true, it's a huge gamble. T-Dub, Benji, how do you feel about the Switch passing the PS4 and Game Boy this coming quarter? It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. Kind of wild how fast PS4 died. Pandemic basically killed it. Sony had to prioritize making more PS4s or completely kill it to make the PS5. And that's why we saw PS4 just like annihilate, collapse, like literally instantly. I don't think any of us saw the PS4 death coming as fast as it did. I don't think any of us saw that. Like they just killed support like instantly. Like in terms of hardware. They still have cross-gen games, but you know what I mean? Like they just essentially once PS5 came out, they stopped shipping PS4 in very low volumes because they had to prioritize PS5 because production became such a challenge. So it's incredible that Switch passed it, and there's still a lot of life left. There's still a lot. It's going to still sell millions and millions and millions of units. Space Dovakin saying, hope I'm doing all right. Doing good, man. Doing good. I hope you're doing good, Space Dovakin. What's up, Jacob Novick? Samuel Tolbert, good friend of mine. Check out Samuel's work with Windows Central. I think you still do Android Central. I always say that, but I can't remember if you actually still do Android Central or not. But I know you do Windows Central stuff, Samuel, and all sorts of various stuff. Great journalist. Check him out. And a good friend of mine. Benji, hope you're doing well, bro. I'm bullish on a strong launch for God of War Ragnarok. I'm thinking 4.5 million in first 3 days. Thoughts? I could see it. Samuel wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, I'm 1,000% sure this is going to be their biggest launch since the PS4. So since PS5 came out, nothing's launched bigger than this. That was a PlayStation exclusive. But, man, 4.5 mil is high. that would kind of crush The Last of Us, but I don't think it's impossible, dude. The tracking on Ragnarok looks ridiculous. It looks ridiculous. Samuel, I think there's a very real chance. That's what I'll say. I'm not going to lock into over 4 million yet until I see it, but I don't think that's a crazy prediction. I'm seeing some people go over 5 million. I think that might be a little bullish. I could be wrong. Maybe Sony's going to come out and announce 5 mil. I think the 5+ million predictions might be a little bullish, but I think 4 to 4.5 million is not a crazy prediction, Samuel. I could see it happening. I could see it. The tracking on this thing's ridiculous. Way bigger than Horizon. It's tracking way bigger. All right. Like 4 minutes left. 4 minutes and I'm out. So I'm like spamming through the last few. Did I miss any super chats? Did. Highlander's got 1 super chat here at the end with a 2. What happens to Spider-Man movie IP if they sell? I believe the way the contract works is it reverts back to Disney. I think. I am almost certain of that. I would have to look into it, but I saw that reported before. I believe the way the Spider-Man IP rights work is if they sell, it goes back to Disney. I do not believe that that transfers to new ownership. I believe the way the contract works, it is exclusively to Sony. And if they sell, it reverts back. So I believe that Sony would get, or Disney would get full Spider-Man rights. I think. We'll have to see, though. Highlander, I'm not positive on that. I've just seen that reported before by people in the entertainment space. I believe they revert back to Disney if they sell. And T-Dub says Disney would love that, huh? Yeah, they'd be thrilled. They would be thrilled. But normally, IP goes, like, right? Normally, if you own the IP, whenever you sell, it goes with you. But Spider-Man's like a different case in that it's just the movie rights and all other IP rights are owned by Disney. And I think the way that that contract worked whenever it was originally signed by Marvel, I believe it says, if I remember the reporting right, Disney gets the rights back if they sell. All right, 1 or 2 more and I got to bounce. So I'm just picking like 1 or 2 more. Jacob Novik, I'm 5 hours and 41 minutes into God of War Ragnarok. We're in a very similar spot. I'm 6 hours in. And as a guy who's really deep into Xbox since I bought my first ever Xbox 2018, I must say you can have an argument God of War Ragnarok is my game of the year. It's definitely in my top 2. I do think I'm still leaning towards Elden Ring over Ragnarok right now, but I'm still early in Ragnarok. I'm 6 hours in, so maybe by the time I finish it, Ragnarok takes its spot. Elden Ring, to me, was something really special. I mean, that's in my top 10 games of all time. So right now, if I had to give it, I would still go Elden Ring. But Ragnarok right now is my runner-up. And like I said, I'm early. Maybe by the time I finish Ragnarok, it takes my game of the year. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having God of War Ragnarok as your game of the year. I think it's one of the top 2 games of the year. I do think so. I think that and Elden Ring are the best games of 2022. So you could flip that either way. I would have 0 complaints. If at the Game Awards either one of those wins, 0 complaints from me. Like, they both deserve it. It could easily go to either one. Timmer, what's up, man? Good to see you. Doing good. Reverse World of Switch 2 is next year. How do we feel overall about the Switch generation in terms of games? Top 3 of their systems ever. Reverse, it's my favorite Nintendo system since Super Nintendo. It's not going to be the case for everybody. You know, I'm getting old now, so I remember Super Nintendo. I think my daughter just hurt herself. I think I have to go, guys. All right, I gotta go. Something just happened with my daughter. I gotta go. Have a good one, guys. Sorry, I apologize for the cutoff there, but I just heard my daughter fall and she's crying. I gotta go. Bye, guys. See ya. You're amazing. Stay safe. Play some games. I'll see you soon. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you haven't. I gotta go. I'm sure my daughter's fine, but I got